Hello, welcome to Academic Learning, and today we're going to be doing an introduction to slope. Now, slope kind of pertains to a simple type of function called a linear function. A linear function. And what a linear function is, it's just a line. So what I've drawn here is a linear function. This is also a linear function. So linear functions are just lines. They're not anything fancy, even though the name is kind of fancy. And one thing about linear functions is that they have this certain property, which is kind of like steepness. You see, this line that I've drawn here doesn't go up too steep, not too fast, pretty good. But if we draw something like this, you see it goes up much steeper. Or if we do something like this, it's less steep. And let's say we wanted to measure the steepness of a function. How would we do that? And that is where slope gets in. Slope is how steep a function, or let's say linear function, is. And how do we measure slope? Well, we measure slope through triangles. And I know that may sound a bit absurd, but I'll show you. So for this one, let's just pretend that has 2, 1, 1. My lines are not the best. We can use a triangle to draw this. How will we use a triangle, you may ask? Well, that relates to the slope formula, which is how fast the y value goes up. And this is kind of written as this triangle y, because triangle y means change in y. Means change in y. And the change in y is just how fast it goes up. But that's not it for slope. Just because it goes up fast doesn't mean it's very steep. You see here, from here to here, it goes up fast, but it's not necessarily steep. So we want to measure how fast in the y value it goes, but divided by the change in the x value. That way we can get a more accurate measurement. And I encourage you to ponder on why this formula works. To use this formula, we pick 2 points that are kind of easy to measure, that the line passes through. So it could be 4, let's just pretend that goes through 4, my lines aren't the best. It could be 4, 4, and also 2, 2. And now that we have this, we want to measure what is the change in the up value, the change in y. And here, we can just measure the change in y is equal to 2. So we can substitute that into our slope formula is equal to 2 over the change in x. And the change in x from here to here is also just 2. 2. And now we see that the slope is 2 divided by 2. So it is 1. Okay, but what does a slope of 1 really mean? A slope of 1 means that for every 1 x value, you go up 1 y value. So every 1 x value, you go up 1 y value. 1 x value, 1 y value. 1 x value, 1 y value. 1 x value, 1 y value. And because of this, slope is constant. Like, you could measure from any point and it would still get a constant slope. In fact, that's how we define linear functions, having a constant slope. Okay, if you didn't quite understand me there, I will do one more practice problem. And if you want more practice problems, just look up slope practice problems online. I have some resources in the description that have practice problems if you need them. So again, to find slope, pick 2 points that it crosses to. So let's say this point 0, 0 we'll pick, and this other point 1, 2. It's good to pick points that pass through integers because then the math is just easier. Okay, again, we want the change in y over change in x. And the change in y is 1, 2. 2. But we also need the change in x. And the change in x is just 1. So our slope is 2 divided by 1. But what does a slope of 2 over 1 really mean? Well, this means that for our change in y, if it's 2, so if our change in y is 2 from any 2 points, the corresponding change in x will be 1, and vice versa. If the change in x is 1, the corresponding change in y will be 2. And this is true for no matter what point. Like I said before, slope is constant. Okay, I'm going to end up this section with a challenge problem. This line has a slope of 2. Or it might not. Just pretend it does because my lines aren't very good. And let's say if our change in y value is 4, change in y is equal to 4, then what's our change in x value? Okay, let me rephrase that problem because that might have been a bit confusing. If we have a change in y value of 4 between 2 points, and that means we go up by 4, so 1, 2, 3, 4, what is the corresponding change in x value? And again, don't use my graph to know this because it's kind of bad. Just rely on the math. So if we know our change in slope is 2, so delta y, oh, by the way, this triangle is called delta, divided by delta x is equal to 2. And remember, this is just the slope. It's just the slope. And our delta y is 4, so this is just 4. Then what is 2? Well, here we can just solve for x. To solve for x in this problem, we can just treat delta x like any regular variable. So we multiply both sides by delta x to get rid of the delta x in the denominator. So we get 4 equals 2 times delta x. And we isolate delta x on one side by dividing 2 on both sides. So we get 2 is equal to, well, the 2 on the top and the 2 on the bottom cancel out. So you get 2 is equal to delta x. So I'm just going to draw a quick sketch of that graph. So if we went 4 in the y direction, our corresponding x direction would be 2. Okay, I hope that made sense. If it didn't, though, you can just comment and I will do my best to respond to you. Bye.